What's up everyone, and welcome back to HateWatchers. We're pushing on ahead with our reviews for the Acolyte with episode 4, entitled Day. Let's get right into the breakdown, and that means spoilers ahead. We kick things off on Kofar, where we see Kalnaka, the Wookiee Jedi, this time wearing a robe, meaning that in episode 2, Kalnaka sauntered up to its home butt-ass naked. Inside its shitty studio apartment with a mold problem, we see that this rug created some art that only a mother could love. And it's trying to trim its nails in the worst way possible. On Coruscant, Master Ginger trains the next generation of Disney Jedi, or at least as much as someone with no soul can. Osha says goodbye to this Padawan who she never really had a relationship with, but the show just assumes that they connected because they're both young women. Osha tells her that she's Audi 5000. She wants no part in stopping her twin sister from murdering innocent Jedi. May and her stoner sidekick land on Kofar to find the Wookiee, one in the hopes of killing him, and one hoping to score some primo shrooms growing on the walls of the Jedi's shanty. A bunch of Jedi in cheap makeup watch a replay of May's fighting and break it down like it's SportsCenter. Master Facelift wonders if May may be a part of a splinter group of Force users, checking another item off the infamous High Republic storyboard. Master Timewaster comes in and openly mocks Master Squid, the only Jedi who has any idea what he's doing, because they all suck and she needs to tear down Squid to make herself look better. In the hall, Master Squid mentions how ironic it is that Master Timewaster is talking shit after the mess she left in the bathroom last week, and everyone overhears it. They put aside their crappy argument and come up with a plan to lure May out with a trap, using Osha as bait. Sounds like a job for Master Bay Tor. May's stoner sidekick says if he was a Sith, he'd kill more Jedi than you can shake a stick at. Then May asks the sidekick if he talks this much during sex, and when he evades the question, she asks if he's ever had sex.
You know I haven't.
Osha is playing her Game Boy when Squid makes a scene by yelling at her, and then Master Squid convinces her to come look for her sister May, giving us another instance of a character just changing their mind in their next scene. Squid gets her stupid hopes up.
You want me to rejoin the Jedi?
Well,
they dress Osha in a space trash bag befitting of her station, and Master Bay Tor makes a public apology after he was caught feeding the geese in the Jedi Temple courtyard yesterday. Osha is checking her breasts for lumps, and an overgrown gopher who's leering at her says, "Nice!" When they arrive, the Padawan asks the local crime lord, Harvey Weinstein, where the Wookiee Jedi might be. Master Bay Tor tells May that this trash bag really suits her, and Master Soul thinks he hears the Wookiee Jedi Kalnaka in the distance. Now the gopher can use this noxious gas trail to track down Kalnaka's location. Osha asks her old friend to kill May if Master Squid won't, and Master Bay Tor says worry not, I've been training my right hand for a long time. The stoner sidekick leads May into the thick of the forest, and it makes us wonder if no one knows where Kalnaka is and it's so hard to get there, how on earth did these two incompetent scavengers happen upon it in episode 2? The gopher says that this part of the forest smells like balls, probably due to these giant black nutsacks on the trees, which Osha just can't help but touch. This causes a flying roly-poly to awaken, and like all bugs, it can't help but be attracted to light, flying right into Master Squid's lightsaber. This pale Padawan casually glorifies death before she starts making moves on Osha. May stops for a beer, but her sidekick urges her to continue, saying, "You must complete your trials." I mean, you should stick with it, for the Master, whoever he is. May does a 180 of her own, trapping her sidekick and telling him she no longer wants to be an Acolyte and will surrender to the Jedi, which comes completely out of nowhere, and then she leaves him hanging in disbelief, much like everyone watching this show. Master Squid is kinda losing it, having flashbacks to episode 6 of Squid Game, and Osha tells him she's starting to get the Force tingles again, maybe related to that lesbian touch earlier. May, a master of martial arts and an acolyte of the dark side, trips like an idiot, and the gopher is in the perfect position to laugh his ass off. May, who wants to be caught, for some reason gets up and runs away. She reaches Kalnaka's shanty first, where she sees that the Master just closed his Pornhub window, but then we see that the real gaping gash is the fresh wound on his chest. The Jedi follow the stench of farts, rotting flesh, and Wookiee juice to Kalnaka's hovel and demand May's surrender, the thing she wanted to do, if you remember. But then a black figure descends behind Osha like Spawn, and the Jedi spend the next 30 seconds letting Darth Chuckles over here waltz right up to Osha, politely waiting for this master of evil to draw his weapon first. The Jedi valiantly charge in, and Darth Chuckles tosses Osha aside like the trash she is, and uses Force Fart on the group, bringing this episode to an explosive, stinky end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch. And it should come as no real surprise that this was another hate watch. You'd think that just about anything this show could come up with after last week's episode would look good by comparison, but you'd be wrong. I'm eager to see how much of a drop-off this show's had after last week's debacle, but we'll have to wait a few weeks to get those viewership numbers. Disney could tell us, but they're understandably tight-lipped on the matter. And if you stopped watching last week, remember that it's written into the HateWatchers charter that we'll keep watching so that you don't have to. And if you're wondering if there was any further development or clarification of last week's nonsense, don't worry, there isn't. The matter was dropped completely. Don't all great stories just pick up and drop major storylines on a whim? Well, this one does. Before we even get into the episode, I have to bring up something listed in the description for this episode, where they referred to May as a clever assassin. Clever? That's a pretty delusional claim considering how we've seen her operate. If you want the character to be clever, write her that way. Show us, don't just tell us in the episode description. Now, this show is just so dumb at times. We have this scene where this big menacing bug is whizzing right at them, and it flies right past Osha and into Master Soul's lightsaber and it dies. Then, just so that you don't think this was stupid, two characters in the background say, "It went straight for his lightsaber. It's attracted to light." Again, show, don't tell. How hard is it to have a few more of these things awaken and threaten the Jedi so the audience can see it happening, rather than just having two background characters deliver lines of exposition about the world around them? But no, that's it. That's the end of the threat, and any idea of the audience feeling something during this interaction is out the window. They go through the effort of explaining this mechanism and then don't have it come up again in the episode. It's like someone at Disney watched it and said, "That's dumb," and then they added these two lines in post to explain it away. This episode did bring us this absolute banger of a line though.
Can't believe my sister's Jedi scum.
And then May goes on to say, "Hey, my sister is alive. I want to be on her team." With very little thought put into like, "Hey, you were murdering people in cold blood a few days ago." It's kind of funny in how stupid it is that she's willing to murder Jedi over an event that she doesn't even know well enough to realize her sister survived. Like, she has almost no idea about what really happened in the event, but she's willing to kill based on it. This is like a 9-year-old's fanfic with zero thought put into it. Even the acting is barely on the level of what I've seen in Star Wars fan films before. All the Jedi Masters in the temple were so stiff and robotic, like they pulled a bunch of actors out of the dumpster bin of Hollywood, and boy, that dialogue isn't doing them any favors. Speaking of which, there's so much dialogue in this show where they're trying to force a ton of unearned meaning into conversations. Like the conversation between Osha and the Padawan. The two characters have no relationship that we've seen, but the show tries to make Osha's departure this impactful moment between the two of them. And there's quite a few scenes like this that they're just trying to force to be impactful, rather than having the story make them impactful. Which is an impossible task when the story is just tripe that washes over you and leaves you feeling nothing but despair for a franchise long since past. On the bright side, the Lord had mercy on us, and this was an extremely short episode. But like with every episode, we have to ask ourselves if this episode is worth $22.5 million, the average cost of each episode. And at something like a 27-minute runtime, this episode was almost $1 million per minute. For that cool $22 million, we got another crappy entry into this fanfic written by someone with the mind of a child that looked cheap as hell from start to finish. At first, and from a distance, the planet Kofar, for example, looked decent and worth exploring. It certainly wasn't unique in the Star Wars universe, but not everything can be unique 47 years into a franchise. Once the Jedi stepped into the forest, however, it looked awful. The rocks looked unbelievably fake, like a set they'd put together for a live-action dinosaur TV show from the 80s. The last scene delivered the biggest problem with the episode though, at least in terms of how the show fits in the overall Star Wars lore that the creators so openly despise. So everyone knows there's a master at this point, right? They've been discussing the existence of this master for a few episodes. They even openly talk about it in this room full of Jedi Masters. So therefore, everyone who knows about it needs to suddenly die for that line from the Phantom Menace to make any sense, right? For the Jedi in Episode 1 to not have heard of the existence of the Sith in a millennia, right? Well, even that doesn't make any sense. They're discussing this at the Jedi Temple. So no one bothers to even leave a post-it note behind on the blue milk dispenser in the temple break room? Sith ? Sad face. This show looks like it's set to unwrite the established canon at every possible turn.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
I mean, the guy who says the actual line from Phantom Menace that this show is contradicting is in this episode. So they either think that they've got some roller coaster twist that will satisfy everyone's concerns, which is incredibly unlikely, or they're rubbing their disrespect for the canon in the fans' faces. They even changed his species' lifespan just to include him here. It's simply a wholesale effort to screw up as much of the lore as possible. Now, my prediction, based solely on how stupid and cheap the creators of this show are, is that all those new Jedi we see with the expedition in this episode will get killed. Disney just had to throw in some red shirt guys for this fight so they don't have to kill off any Jedi of importance to the story. Because we can't have any real meaningful death in this show, even though viewers wouldn't care if anyone from this show died. Outside of Master Soul, of course. Also, I'm predicting that the next episode is entitled Night, because that's the only thing that would make this episode being named Day make sense. Also, there's a pretty decent theory that this green bitch is the dark side master. She seems to be stymieing the Jedi's attempts at identifying the true threat, stopping them from reporting this potential Sith to the Council. And if that's the big misdirection twist that's only obscured by A, how stupid of an idea it is, and B, the fact that they keep calling the Master a he, then that's incredibly dumb. Well, we're halfway through the season, and the show is like 0 for 4 so far on all the major lore connections this show has to the larger Star Wars universe. It doesn't feel anything like Star Wars, and it's doing nothing to pull people into its crappy story. But let's see how far down this show can cast the franchise into the abyss in the back half of the season. I know most of you weren't watching this show to begin with, and that's a wise decision, but if you were watching, did you stick with the Acolyte after last week's shit show? If so, are you purely hate watching, or are you still watching out of some morbid curiosity? Does seeing a red lightsaber and meeting a new Dark Lord pique your interest in the slightest, or do you think there are no tricks the show can pull to bring people back? Let us know in the comments. And remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to HateWatchers to stay up to date on the Acolyte. Thank you for ingesting all this tripe with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.